Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Veterans Voices. Tonight we are talking about veterans and homelessness. We have a thought-provoking show ahead, so stay tuned. Tonight's Shadow Box belongs to retired Master Sergeant Peter V. Briggs. He enlisted in the Air Force in 1982. His military career would take him from Travis Air Force Base to Saudi Arabia for the Iran-Iraq War. He was also activated for Operation Desert Storm and later for Operation Iraqi Freedom. Back home, he played Santa Claus for over 20 years for the 349th Operation Teddy Bear. He retired in 2013 after over 31 years of service. The flag portion of the Shadow Box is a little larger than normal to accommodate his father's burial flag. His father, John A. Briggs, was a gunner's mate aboard 3 different Navy destroyers from 1941 to 1945. He was Peter's personal hero and the inspiration for his own career in the military. Welcome to Veterans Voices. I'm Nathan Johnson. Veterans Voices is a monthly television show that explores important issues that affect the veterans community. We encourage you to participate in tonight's very important conversation. If you would like to ask a question, please send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1 or email us at veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. Tonight, we don't have the opportunity for folks to call in, so we apologize to anyone who normally joins us by phone, but you plenty of ways to communicate with us through Facebook or through email. We'd love to hear from you. As you can imagine, things look, or as you're already seeing and noticing, things look a little different. The beginning of the show is even a little rough because we're doing things a little differently tonight in an attempt to model social distancing and the stay-at-home order. So actually, all of our guests are joining us by live video conference, and I'm actually joining you not inside the CCTV studio, but downstairs in the Contra Costa County Veterans Service Office. And we have Aaron Esquer so far with us. Welcome, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you, and greetings to all of our viewers out there.
Yeah, Aaron's in Sacramento tonight, so I'll just be hosting the show, but look for Aaron to join us again next month. In fact, she'll probably be hosting the show. So things have been a lot different over the past month since our last live show. How have things been going for you, Aaron?
The same, just trying to adjust to the whole stay-at-home order and doing business a little differently these days.
Yeah, things are different here in the County Veteran Service Office as well. And to all of our veterans watching throughout the state or throughout the nation, just know that veteran service offices are still open and ready to serve you. Here in Contra Costa County, all of our team is located at home and is helping veterans remotely through phone and email. And we're able to help veterans file claims just as we would if they walked into the front door of our office. So, Aaron, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Good to see you. And you'll be tuning in and asking questions, I imagine, throughout the next hour, and we'll see you again next month.
Yes, sir.
So this evening on Veterans Voices, we'll be talking about veterans and homelessness. We'll discuss the roots of homelessness in the veterans community, see what our county and our nation are doing to help veterans in need, and look at some innovative solutions to the homeless problem. Our live guests are Dr. Jeffrey Kicksmiller, Jaime Betancourt, Scott Whitaker, and Leonard Ramirez. And as I get everyone unmuted here, and welcome everyone to the show. Scott, why don't you briefly introduce yourself to us?
Good evening, Nathan. This is Scott Whitaker. I'm a 6-year Marine Corps veteran and currently the East Bay Stand-Down Director.
Thanks, Scott, so much for joining us. And Jaime, tell us a little bit about yourself.
How's it going? My name is Jaime Betancourt. I'm a VA social worker. I work with the Central Valley's homeless shelters to provide services for homeless veterans. I'm also a Navy veteran, served 4 years in USS Halliburton.
And thanks so much, Jaime. Leonard, you can tell us a little bit about yourself. I think you're on mute, but
I think I've taken it off.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
Yes, I've started with the Marine Corps, 2 years of Marine Corps, and combined service with the National Guard and Reserve. 4 deployments, total service 26 years.
Thank you so much, Leonard. Honored to have you on the show. And last but not least, our returning guest from last month's show on preventing violence, Dr. Jeff Kixmiller. Jeff, introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay, I'm a long-term employee at the Martinez VA, a psychologist, and I run the post-deployment assessment and treatment program here in Martinez.
Thanks so much for coming back to join us, Jeff. It's an honor to have you. You're very knowledgeable on this topic, so let's just start with you. We want to dive into this conversation by talking about the mental health aspect of homelessness. I know a lot of people see and witness homelessness on an everyday basis, but may not understand beyond just the economical factors of homelessness, how mental health really takes an effect. Is there a high rate, or is there a rate of homelessness, a rate of mental illness amongst our homeless population?
There is. It can vary by era, but in general, all vets, about 50% have mental health issues or diagnoses. And if you added substance abuse on top of that, it can get up into the 60s, high 60%. So it's a very, very common thing to experience with homelessness.
So in some instances, is homelessness a result of maybe untreated or undiagnosed mental health conditions? It's complex, but yes, it looks like
pre-existing diagnoses of things like PTSD, which is about 2/3 of the homeless in Iraq and Afghanistan vets, is something that oftentimes might have occurred in even from childhood, but more often combat-related PTSD. And the symptoms of post-traumatic stress certainly contribute to loss of jobs, difficulty with family relations, not following through with maybe healthcare and service connection, and therefore they're just really vulnerable for becoming homeless.
Right. And what you mentioned rates of mental illness. What would be some of the most common mental health conditions that result and lead towards homelessness?
Right. They're kind of called severe mental illnesses that are more persistent and chronic. They're not easily, treated and cured. So they're things that people have to manage with assistance of, good connections with mental health and good, support systems. So things like, anything that includes like psychotic disorders, PTSD is a unfortunate frequent one, major depression, bipolar disorder, are some of the major kind of mental health issues that can really make someone vulnerable. And then on top of that, living homeless in the streets or couch surfing or in that unstable life where you don't know where your next roof might be, and that oftentimes maybe is in an alley or on the street, is also contributes to additional re-traumatization by virtue of just kind of the risks associated with living homeless.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine that being homeless is a very dangerous world. You're not protected in your environment there. And so certain types of traumas probably lead to PTSD if it didn't exist before, or exacerbation of PTSD. What does simply being homeless do to add to mental health as well? I just would imagine that in trying to envision myself as a person who's homeless, I think certain things like isolation, disconnection to society, certain non-trauma specific type mental health problems must exist as well. Are there common developments of substance abuse and depression after someone becomes homeless if it didn't exist before?
Right. No, I think it is. It might have, contributed to becoming homeless, but things like substance abuse can be a really common, almost understandable kind of self-medication for the anxiety, the stress, the just persistent, kind of stress with living homeless. So it's not unusual to see those comorbidities with it. And it can affect differently males and female veterans, because male veterans tend to be alone, and therefore they're oftentimes kind of just trying to survive as best they can, but often disconnected from families and friends and not in work, and not able to, oftentimes access healthcare as they'd want. And female veterans, unfortunately, especially Iraq and Afghanistan female veterans, they unfortunately also often have dependents. So they have their kids that are also living on the streets with them. And the added burden and stress just is incredible.
Right. Yeah, I can understand the differences in the population. I'm wondering, when someone who's been homeless for a extended period of time, what we would call chronic homelessness, when they return to some type of housing circumstance, say transitional or permanent housing, how is their mental health affected by that transition?
I'm sure some of the speakers on the panel will be able to chime in on this too. I mean, certainly that is, I think, all data and beliefs are getting individuals with mental health issues and substance abuse problems into housing to where they have stable living, a reliable place to, feel safe, and from there branch out and get connections to healthcare, community resources, if so inclined, into VA services. And then that really is the ability to transition back, but with all the skills and the treatment of the mental health issues that are going to continue to be a problem without some assistance in most cases.
We have just about a minute left, and I want to thank you so much for joining us again here, Jeff. And I want to invite our audience to participate in this conversation as well. Maybe you've experienced homelessness. Maybe you know someone who's experienced homelessness, or maybe you have a question or comment. So reach us on Facebook, reach us by email. Last question for you, Jeff. Is homelessness something that is hard for a veteran to bring up in counseling? Do you find at times that you're working with a veteran on certain issues and you're unaware of their homeless status?
Yeah, it is. It's unfortunately very common. It's a sense of shame, embarrassment that they're in this situation, and it's not something that oftentimes they want to bring up, just for a sense of kind of maintaining self-esteem and not showing how vulnerable they are. And yet it's pretty critical to find someone that they can connect to and tell, so that we can get them the right sorts of resources that we'll be talking about this evening.
Very good. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you, and you'll continue with us throughout the rest of the show, but we're going to end this segment. And when we come back, we will continue our conversation with our panel. And later tonight, we will take a look at the groundbreaking program helping homeless veterans in Kansas City, Missouri. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Nathan Johnson, Contra Costa County Veteran Service Officer. On April 1st, the 2020 census will be taking place. It's important that veterans understand the census will not share information with other agencies. Your information is protected by the Census Bureau. But most importantly, many veteran service organizations depend on veterans being counted in order to receive funding for their programs. VA clinics, vet centers, and county veteran service offices depend on you being counted. So just remember, Census 2020, count me in.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Welcome back. Want to be part of the conversation? We'd love to have you tonight. Our topic is veterans who are experiencing homelessness. Please send us a message through Facebook. We're live broadcasting right now on CCTV and on Facebook. Facebook, you can find us Veterans Voices 1, and we'll take all of your questions and comments there. You can also send us an email, veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. This is fantastic. I'm glad this is working out. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. A little bit of a different format tonight as you join us virtually, and all of our guests are joining us virtually. And we'll now change our focus towards a conversation with Jaime Betancourt from the VA Palo Alto healthcare system. Jaime, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Nate.
So Jaime, you take veterans, as we mentioned, with Jeff, who are experiencing mental health or maybe experiencing any type of hardship. And as a federal agency, you have solutions for them to get them off the street. Talk a little bit about how you spend your day-to-day on the streets with veterans, getting them into housing.
Well, sadly, right now I can't do any day-to-day work. Well, on the street at least, I have to work from home. But on the day-to-day, we're taking referrals from across the country. We recently had some referrals from Colorado to get into our geriatric program in Lodi. And so we pretty much weed out certain vets. If they're qualified for certain programs, we put them in those programs. If they don't, we have other programs for them. Overall, we have two types of programs, I should say. We have healthcare for homeless veterans, for veterans who are eligible for healthcare services, and we have grants per diem. This program is eligible for veterans who do not qualify for healthcare benefits, but don't have a dishonorable discharge.
Okay.
That program is signed up to 24 months, so we could give extended time to help these guys get housed.
So any veteran without a dishonorable discharge can spend up to 24 months in these programs.
That's true.
We have a question from one of our audience members. Do older homeless veterans age out? Do they finally connect with families or some kind of housing? I think that's maybe two different questions. And I think maybe the question has something to do with, does age play a factor in when a veteran wants to seek help, whether it be from the VA or any other type of transitional housing program?
Sadly, age does play a factor. And I say sadly because right now during COVID, we are having more and more veterans register for the first time for healthcare services. So a lot of these individuals are experiencing homelessness for the first time. A recent study from UCSF found they followed 350 veterans over the age of 55, found out half of them didn't become homeless until the age 55. And that's what we're seeing right now in the area. And mainly because lack of personal resources, whether retirement wasn't as much as they had hoped, or, healthcare is coming on. With the older homeless population, we're seeing healthcare concerns that you would typically, 20 years older. So if you're 50 years old and you've been homeless for a few years, not a few years, but a decade or so, you're more likely to have healthcare issues in line with somebody that's 70 years old who's never experienced homelessness. And so we're seeing a lot of these healthcare issues along with mental health issues play a severe factor in getting them out of this lifestyle of homelessness. A lot of it based on one of the simplest things, actually, access to consistent medication. As the doctor was talking earlier, being homeless is a very dangerous, high-risk lifestyle. A lot of personal property and medications are often stolen, which these veterans desperately need to maintain mental stability or physical stability.
Okay. Yeah, I never thought about the factor of how age may be a leading factor of causing homelessness, that the ability for someone to earn an income at a younger age may not exist as they get older, or they may not be a priority for certain types of jobs. Or as you mentioned, it may get more expensive to age, and they may not be able to afford that. So when veterans come into your program, what are they generally looking for? Are they looking for just a little bit of a hand up so that they can get themselves housed? Or are they looking for some more extensive case management and someone to help them find housing and find employment?
It's a little bit of both. Usually they come out looking for, they need a hand up. That's it. They took a slip, now they need to get back on their feet. But what we're seeing, a lot of these guys are eligible for resources that they may not even know. The VA pension, aid and attendance, these are pretty much when they sit down and meet with us, we go through the entire military record and we ask them about financial resources, social resources, intimate family resources, and we just try to build on what they have. And we designed the treatment plan to be according to them and as respectful to them as possible.
So run us through what a typical process looks like. Veterans homeless on the street, do they meet a social worker like you from the VA and you offer them transitional housing? They accept it and then they move from where into permanent housing? What does this look like in terms of who reaches out to who to begin with, and generally who brings up the conversation of like getting off the street and changing their life?
So the referrals, they'll come from anywhere. And once we get the referral, we make engagement with the veteran. We'll contact them. We'll set up a meeting with them, usually at the shelters, and we'll talk to them about the services we provide. We let them know their eligibility criteria, if they're eligible or not. And we start running down the list. Where's your income coming from? How much income do you have? When did you serve? What kind of discharge did you have? Do you have access to your VA medical records, military records? Do you have a copy of your DD-214? Just to run down what they need. So the first meeting we have is usually the assessment. It takes about an hour and a half. And that's when we're gauging with the veteran, where they're at, what they need, how to get there. Once they've been enrolled to the program, they get assigned a case manager at the shelter. And it's this case manager's job to say, okay, well, with Jaime on this date you met and you said you need these resources. This is the list of resources Jaime provided. I'm going to sit down here, contact these resources with you, and just navigate it. While we're setting this up, one of the things that is coming up, it's a benefit, but it's because of the COVID, we've been getting a lot of support and leeway from our head of the domiciliary department, and they're developing new resources. We've expanded our bed counts at the local shelters. We are getting a rideshare program to help veterans make medical appointments or anything that would be considered essential. Help them connect with Social Security, get the Social Security cards. We've been given a lot of more resources.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. We just have about a minute left, but what are some of the very specific things that the VA is able to do in this current COVID pandemic?
Find shelter, immediately find shelter. If they're considered high risk due to medical issues like COPD, asthma, diabetes, cancers, we're getting them connected to hotels or putting them in different shelters to have smaller environments so they can isolate and be better protected against COVID.
You mentioned, I think, during one of our rehearsals last week, something about trailers. Do they have?
That is correct. And I should have mentioned that. So Governor Gavin Newsom gave the city of Stockton 30 trailers, and we approached them about using some of the trailers, and they've given us 8 trailers so we could use as quarantines for high-risk veterans that would be more susceptible. We can place them there, or even veterans that may have symptoms that are in line with COVID. We're going to use these trailers to remove them from the environment, place them in the trailers so we find out whether they're negative or positive. And then once they're positive, if they are positive, we're going to connect them with, we already connect them with medical staff, but then we seek medical professionals' guidance on how to better prepare and serve these veterans.
So, I mean, what would you want if there was a veteran who's homeless right now watching this show? What would you want them to know about the opportunity to change their living situation and tap into something like the VA to get permanently housed?
I would say that life experience is the greatest tool we're going to have to dictate how we view the world. The VA is an entity like any other entity with people, and we're doing everything we can right now to better serve them. All I would ask is that they come into the VA and just give us a chance. We have lots of resources, and if they're willing to work with us, we're going to give them everything we got to offer.
Great. So I would imagine there's many people like you throughout the nation doing this kind of work, and we want to thank social workers like you, Jaime, who are out there working with other agencies to help homeless veterans on the street. Definitely an important time right now with this current COVID pandemic to really protect the health and well-being of our homeless population. So thank you so much, Jaime. Jaime will continue with us, folks, for the rest of the show, but we will move on to a different segment of the show. When we come back, we will hear about the Veterans Community Project. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. After the break, our panel will discuss programs helping homeless veterans right here in Contra Costa County. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. This is a great episode. Stay with us.
Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
Welcome back. If you haven't been able to tell, we've been pushing the census real heavy on veterans' voices, and that's for a reason. This is an important opportunity for our community, for veterans to complete the census. California is doing great nationwide. Contra Costa County is doing excellent, but some of our communities are a little lower in participation than others. So we encourage you to get the word out to your family, to people in your network to participate in the census. It's very important this year that Californians be counted, and particularly veterans. So we're going to shift this conversation back to talking about veterans and homelessness. We want to welcome you to contact us with your questions. We've had a couple of questions, which have been great, but we want your feedback. We want your input. We want your questions and comments. Homelessness affects everyone, not just veterans. But we're having that conversation with our community tonight so we can address this issue with our veterans who are homeless. Send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1 or email us veteransvoices@contracostatv.org. We have back with us Scott Whitaker and Leonard Ramirez. Welcome back, gentlemen. We actually have a question that I saw from Sandy. Thank you so much, Sandy, for joining us. Do homeless veterans commonly find companionship or form a bond with one or more veterans? If so, how much of a help is this to their well-being? So Scott and Leonard are both veterans, both Marine Corps veterans, coincidentally, and are working in the community to help veterans. Scott, you've been part of East Bay Stand Down for years. Give our audience a bit of an understanding of Stand Down, and maybe you can address Sandy's question in regards to homeless veterans connecting with each other.
Sure. Let me give you just an overview. In 1999, the East Bay Stand Down was formed essentially by the Vietnam veterans of Diablo Valley. Since then, we've had about 11 stand downs. And for those that are unaware, a stand down is a safe place to relax. The term came from folks being in combat, so they would take probably 24 to 48 hours to have some relaxation. There's no judgment at stand down. The location is at the Alameda County Fairgrounds in Pleasanton. Essentially, we have 7 counties that are it's not Contra Costa County, but there are 7 counties around the Bay Area that essentially we've gotten about 350 or so veterans, both male and female. We have roughly 2,000 volunteers. Corporate sponsors help out. They come in for a 4-day event. Well, event is a term to use. They are access to medical, dental services, legal services, and housing. And again, everyone knows about Maslow's hierarchy, where shelter and food are essential psychological needs. So they are connected at the community services tent. 2 years ago, we had roughly 234 housing visits. So within the community services, there's Shelter Inc., which is an entity, Operation Dignity, Swords to Plowshares as well. I'll just give you just an example of camaraderie. Nathan had mentioned that I've been connected with stand downs. In 2016, I was a tent leader, and I actually created a bond with a number of the folks in my tent. I still engage with them. Outside of stand down, I call them every couple of weeks. We go out and have dinner, essentially try to maintain that bond. So Nathan, to answer your question, camaraderie, I think, is very high on the list for veterans, not only at stand down, but in their daily routines, daily lives when they're accessing, care at the VA, et cetera. So yes, once a Marine, always a Marine, Leonard, also a Marine also, but service members do tend to form together in packs, essentially.
Yeah, and that leads in really well to introducing you, Leonard, in your program, because just as Scott mentioned, veterans connect with other veterans who are homeless, but you hope to provide a connection beyond stand downs that provides more of long-term permanent housing. Tell us about your program. I believe it's a nonprofit located here in the county.
Yes, we operate out of Pittsburgh. We have a duplex that we have different veterans that we live that are introduced to the program. First of all, I wanted to thank Scott because we have received 2 of the veterans from the stand down out of Dublin in the past. But our program is transitional housing for veterans, all but the funding. We operate as a transitional housing, similar to GPD. But primarily what we do is we do give them an opportunity to stay upward of 24 months. We haven't had anybody to stay there that long. But our primary purpose is to give veterans a stable living environment, free from any distractions and habits they may be trying to get away from. The idea that they would focus on their education, employment, training, and for us to provide those services for them as part of their individual service plan. So that's something that's very critical. And I know that Jeff mentioned, that you had asked about what kind of changes people make when they're in the program. That's very individual. People come in with many issues that they developed over the year. They don't evolve simultaneously, and they don't go away simultaneously as well. But we do, as Scott mentioned, provide the shelter with the idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You take care of that one piece, and then the rest starts falling into place.
How does that look? When you mention you take care of some of their basic but most important needs, providing them with a warm meal, a safe, dry place to sleep. What do you see change within them after a couple of days or maybe a couple of months? I know that for stand down, it's just a matter of a couple of days, but for your program, Leonard, maybe after a couple of months.
But stabilization is very critical for all of them, a sense of security, that they're not going to get rushed out, that they can be there with the idea that they can't stay much longer, but always with the understanding that it is temporary and that they will be moving on. But what I've found is when they're there, they develop that sense of camaraderie with other veterans, and there's that connection. And they go out and they have dinner with each other. They go out to events with each other. We take them to events. We try to make it as much of a community environment as possible because it's the whole principle of camaraderie, and that they find that in the housing that we provide. It's not when they come in. Our primary purpose is to take care of their health needs, their benefits or their pensions, with the idea and ultimately once we've taken care of that, then they can start thinking about work. They can start thinking about school. They can start thinking about training. But absent housing and stability and developing resiliency, they're not going to be able to sustain any of those things, let alone obtain them.
Now, go ahead, Scott.
Additional, a number of good news stories come out of stand down. And again, it's just a small segment of time, but we've seen participants who have been down and out, who have gone through stand down and have wanted to get right. The next stand down, they end up becoming volunteers, maybe a tent leader. There's a number of examples where we will have folks that have actually gone through that and have succeeded into areas of leadership. As everyone on this call knows, military veterans are very selfless and they want to take care of others before they take care of themselves, essentially. So they're always there trying to help others. They're very humble about their experiences, and essentially they want to make their tribe so much better. And again, helping others is essentially what they're looking to do.
Yes. But the connection is not just between the veterans themselves in terms of in the housing, but from us to them and from them to each other and outward. Because yes, we've had a number of veterans this last go around with a Delta stand down participate, come in and help me run a booth. So yes, it's always giving back, and it's an appreciation and acknowledgement that somebody's giving them a hand up.
Now, gentlemen, we just have about 2 minutes left. Many people in the community may be asking themselves, how can I help? So maybe they're a veteran like you, or maybe they're not a veteran. What would you say to our audience who is wanting to be a part of the solution to helping homeless veterans get off the streets, get into some permanent housing?
Well, I would lean on a number of corporate entities who are essentially putting their money where their mouth is. A number of them around the Bay Area have donated and offered money essentially in the city of Oakland. So I would say, lean on the corporate folks who actually have the money to help offset and leverage land and facilities for these homeless folks. Not only just homeless veterans, but homeless people in general.
I would say that, for those who can't have the time or the money, but they do have a political possible influence where they can let their representatives know that it's an important issue for the community as well as themselves, and to try to make movement through their support in terms of letting them know that this is an important issue.
Fantastic. I think there's a lot of ability for a person to contact their legislator and for people to contact their local businesses and to give themselves. I know that stand downs take over about 1,000 volunteers to function. And Leonard, I know you've got a team of volunteers there as well. So get your hands dirty is what I'm also hearing. Get out there and help get a veteran off the street. So, gentlemen, thank you both so much. We're out of time in this segment, but we'll continue this conversation for our audience tonight. When we come back, we will hear about the Veterans Community Project, a groundbreaking program creating housing for homeless veterans. But first, a message from our friends and partners at Calvet.
Hello, I'm Pat, and this is Sam. We're both from the California Department of Veteran Affairs, and we're very happy to be here with you today.
We are live on the set of Veteran Voices here in Contra Costa County. And Pat and I wanted to come down here personally to the set and take the time to say thank you to Contra Costa County. The Veteran Service Office here does a lot of great work on behalf of veterans.
Yes.
And Veteran Voices as a television program really progressively shapes the national conversation and helps veterans across not only the great state of California, but the United States. So thank you again for all the hard work you do.
Thank you so much.
I'm here now with Brandon Mixon from the Veterans Community Project. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And before we start to talk about your project, please give us a little bit of an understanding about your military background.
Yeah, absolutely. So they kind of go both hand in hand. The reason why Veterans Community Project was started, 2009, joined the military, kind of was looking for that brotherhood and that family, right? We grew different from, a lot of the people in my family. Everybody was educators, and I was kind of more of that guy that lives fast cars and chasing women, right? So I wanted that brotherhood. Like I said, joined in 2009, got stationed with the 82nd Airborne out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Loved it so much, I actually volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan in 2011 as a crew chief on Black Hawk. So I did anything from medevac to you name it. And while serving in Afghanistan in 2011 was in an accident, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, and shoulder injury. From there, they ended up medevacing me to Landstuhl, Germany. In Landstuhl, Germany, that's actually when I found out that I had a traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury. And they said, hey, you can't go back to Afghanistan. I loved Afghanistan. It was kind of like the pro NFL, like I'm playing in the NFL for once, right? And so they sent me back to Fort Bragg and said he needed extensive rehabilitation and cognitive therapy. And from there, I feel like that's kind of where depression started setting in. Again, I was missing that brotherhood. The doctor came to me with what I would say the worst news I've ever had in my life was, hey, we're going to medically retire you. I was just 21 years old. I didn't know where to go or what to do or what I was going to do with my life. And now you're saying, hey, the military no longer needs you anymore, but we're going to send you home and give you all this money, right? I'm very blessed for that. I'm not complaining about that. So came back to Kansas City in 2013. Really battled depression, really battled with suicide. Several attempts and a lot of different weird situations that I was into. Again, just didn't feel like I belonged anymore. I ended up going to a veterans event where I met some other vets, and they're all smiling, man. And I was in a really dark place, and I just was really hateful to a lot of people. And I said, why are you guys so happy? Like, what's going on? They're like, we get to help vets again. And kind of from there is when my brain started, saying, wow, how can I help vets? How can I give back? And me and a group of 5 of my buddies, we realized that a lot of homelessness in Kansas City was a lot of vets as well, but there's no transitional housing for veterans, right? A lot of vets kind of got lost in the cracks. So in this process, we came up with an idea of transitional housing for homeless veterans, and that's actually the birth of Veterans Community Project.
So you're a co-founder and chief project officer for the Veterans Community Project. Tell us a little bit about how this concept gets started. You shared with me earlier there's 5 co-founders.
Yeah, absolutely. There is five co-founders, sorry. We told people about our idea. We wanted to create a nonprofit that took in any veteran. We didn't care if you served a day in the military, 30 years in the military, honorably discharged, dishonorably discharged. People automatically assume because you're a veteran, you qualify for veteran services. That's actually not the case at all. A lot of reservists and a lot of National Guard don't qualify for services as well. And so we wanted to, again, create a nonprofit like that. Well, we couldn't get any federal funding trying to create a program like that. So we said, you know what? We're already spending our own money anyways. Let's just create our own nonprofit. So what we actually did is all of us mortgaged our houses. We're all pitching in some way or another and started Veterans Community Project. We bought a little piece of land inside Kansas City city limits that was right around 4.8 acres. And we knew we wanted to do some type of housing, and the show Tiny House was on. And that was kind of the full concept. But where I come in is actually I built the very first tiny house for Veterans Community Project. And the reason why I built a tiny house is because it helped me with transitioning out of that military mentality back into civilian life mentality. The whole thought process behind a tiny house is, barracks lifestyle, B-huts, connexes, kind of your own little piece of, in a way, heaven, right? It allows you to kind of unwind and feel safe inside of there instead of like a lot of group living situations. The whole reason why a lot of vets won't go to shelters is because of group living situations. The rape rate's really high, the killing rate's really high, and a lot of us vets can, again, withstand that outside of living in shelters. So that's the whole thought process behind the tiny house concept. Not only do that, we actually started a bus pass program. That was the very first in the United States as well. That's really impactful. Any veterans can come to us and we can actually issue them a bus pass that's good for 3 years. Kansas City is the very first one to do that, but we actually house that out of our program and actually pay for that out of our own pockets as well. So that's been very impactful because a lot of vets can come to us and we can kind of start a case management with those guys, right? Say, hey, where are you staying? What's going on? How can we help you? And just be kind of a resource coordinator. But we didn't want to compete with anybody in the community. Again, we just wanted to be kind of that wagon wheel and be the spokes to that. And so what we ended up doing is contacting a lot of organizations and started working with them. And so then we started being a resource referral. And a lot of the veterans that actually fell through the cracks and don't qualify for any other programs, that's when we would help them with our emergency assistance funds or help us with transitional housing. What's so great about our program, since we are privately funded, we can actually design it around the individual's needs. I'm not hating on, government-funded agencies or anything like that. What's so cool about our program is when they bring an individual veteran in, we measure them on 5 different supports, and we're able to grade them on that and build the program on those individuals' needs. So if an individual is struggling with a money management issue, we can help them focus on that. Maybe it's a mental health issue. We can focus on those underlying issues and then help them with their transition. Our transition rate is over 65%. That's huge. And in a lot of cases, it's in homelessness, it's about 13. On top of that, we're seeing over 97% of our veterans, once we have had them successfully transition, they're staying housed. That's huge, right? And that's why our program's kind of been so successful, I guess, and a lot of people are reaching out to us because we've been so successful with helping them with the transition. Again, it's treating them like a brother and a sister, saying, hey, let's figure this out together, not leaving anybody behind. Again, when we built this program, just like me, I felt like I got left behind. And we wanted to create a program that said, you know what, I don't care what you're going through. We're going to figure this out together, and then we're going to transition together. So even after they're out of our program into permanent housing, we can help them. We can help them with transition or maybe money management, etc. So that's what's so unique about our program. I would say what's been awesome and attests to the city of Kansas City is they've been with us 100% of the way. Another unique thing about it is we're the only ones in the United States to build tiny houses according to the code. A lot of cities say, no, I don't want tiny houses in my community, etc. Well, our houses, again, are built to 2018 codes, which is unique because California built 2018 and so does Florida. And so these houses, say worst comes to worst, can actually be sold as a normal house individually. And building the houses with code, building these houses according to code was done with the help of the city of Kansas City. And that's what makes us so unique because, again, we can get permits, we can do a variance on ordinances and stuff like that. But that's what makes it so unique.
You mentioned that you're very involved in terms of case management, those 5 components, and you've built these tiny homes and you have this 4 acres. How many of these homes do you have, and how many veterans have you been able to help since this program was started?
Yeah, so believe it or not, so on site, I'll just cover this real quick. We have 49 tiny houses. 5 of those are actually family units that will sleep 7. So the family units are 320 square feet and will sleep 7. The individual units are 240 square feet and they'll actually sleep 2. But we got to do it over again. We're actually seeing more homeless families as veterans kind of coming through. So we would build more family units. And then on site, we have a 5,000-foot community center. We're able to do healthcare services, dental care services, veterinary services out of there. We have a kind of a computer hall out of there, do you name it. Again, it's kind of like an on-site campus for a lot of our veterans that are living there. And again, we're not paying that with our own funds. We can't. We're a privately funded nonprofit. We have a lot of doctors stepping up and covering days out of our community center. We have a lot of dentist office that are coming in and covering those days. And so it's just been amazing to kind of cover that. I think that answered your question originally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just wondering if you can share a success story with us. We just have a few minutes left, but if you could tell us about a veteran that came to the Veterans Community Project and was helped by your nonprofit and then went on to live maybe in permanent housing somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to be cliche. Every veteran we've been able to help is a success story. We've only been doing this for 3 years, right? What's amazing to see is this last year, $67,000 has gone to emergency assistance funds. Those are veterans that literally don't qualify for any other resources. So we've been able to help them pay for a rent deposit or maybe tire that they've blown, etc. My favorite success story is maybe one of our guys who came in, and him and his dog Petey, right? His house caught on fire. He didn't have insurance. He was 93 years old. He was going to help a 93-year-old, right? He didn't qualify for any services. Pretty much they just left him out there to die. It was a no-brainer for us. Again, we're not going to leave anybody behind. He's been able to come into our program, and we've actually been able to help him with the legal fees and a lot of that stuff. So he actually got a pretty well chunk of money back from his house burning down and stuff like that. We've actually been able to help him transition into permanent housing, but he actually wanted to go to a condo place right next door to kind of our village. And he's been writing us $10,000 checks almost every single month. He's a firm believer in the program. So that's just, one of the success stories. But again, there's many out there, the families that maybe just needed some gas money. Again, our mission is we're not going to leave anybody behind. You're my brother. You're my sister. I have your back 110%.
That's fantastic. Well, Brandon, we're running out of time here. Is there anything last that you want to share about the Veterans Community Project?
No, again, it's for anybody that wants to find out about us, veteranscommunityproject.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, you name it. We've been very fortunate enough. We're going to be in 5 cities by 2022. A lot of volunteer opportunities to helping us build tiny houses, to you name it. But I just appreciate your time giving me the chance to talk, and hopefully we'll be talking more soon. I'll be in California here soon as well.
Fantastic. Brandon Mixon from Veterans Community Project, thank you so much for joining us. And to our audience, please enjoy this episode of A Veteran's Voice.
Erin Esquer is a senior master sergeant, first sergeant in the U.S. Air Force Reserve. We got to know each other through Veterans Voices. She's actually our fearless co-host. And Erin was telling me about this amazing vacation that she had, which I think shows the message that even leaders need to take care of themselves, perhaps especially leaders do. So I wanted to bring her in and talk with her about this amazing trip and what it did for her. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Shauna.
Happy to do this with you on the other side of the table today.
Yes, I'm honored.
Tell us a little bit about your military service and your background.
Yeah, so I have been in the Air Force Reserve for 12 years now, getting ready to be 13. Currently, I'm a first sergeant, as you mentioned, for a rambunctious group of aerial porters down in San Antonio for Joint Base San Antonio-Lackland. And I've been a first sergeant now almost 4 years. So I started my first sergeant journey here at Travis Air Force Base for the 349th Logistics Readiness Squadron. And during that time, I was able to deploy. So within my first year of being a first sergeant, I deployed. Being a first sergeant is definitely, it's not necessarily meant for everybody. It is a position where your mission are your people. Mm-hmm. As you're taking care of them and they're taking care of whatever their mission calls for to serve in the Air Force, you're taking care of them on a personal and a professional level. So if things come up behind the scenes at home that affects them being able to be the airmen that they need to be, Typically, the first sergeant is the one handling that.
But it's still extremely stressful.
Yes.
And this picture here
Yes.
really captures
Yes.
the heavy weight of leadership.
Yes. That picture right there, I was standing with our guide on, obviously in a position of prayer, because for me, spirituality is huge for my resilience. It's huge for me to be able to stay and do what I do on a regular basis. Because as a first sergeant, even in the reserves, I have to be available to my airmen 24/7. It's not just a weekend job. I have to be available for them. And so during that particular time, when that significant incident happened, I went into reactive mode as a first sergeant. I was handling things and taking care of business. But what I didn't do was take the time to just say, Erin, emotionally, how are you? How are you doing, girl? Checking in. Because as soon as I got done with that incident, I was flown right back to my deployed location and had to continue on with the remainder of my deployment. And it was a series of up and downs that I had to face.
And it was actually somebody from the outside, your friend Ashley, that you've been best friends with since the 6th grade, calls you out of the blue and says, I'm going to Nicaragua. Do you want to come?
Yes.
Tell me about that phone call.
And let me tell you, that phone call was so necessary because that was a year after the deployment, and I hadn't really taken the time to face the emotional side of what happened on that deployment. And when I got back to the States, I had another series of events go on with airmen. I lost 2 airmen within a week and a half of each other. And so this past August, I was sitting at a funeral, just thinking about what happened in the desert and thinking about the airmen that I lost, and both very unexpectedly. So when October timeframe came around and I received this phone call from Ashley, it was a godsend. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't care what my bank account said, I didn't care what my vacation leave said. I knew I needed to say yes to Nicaragua because as it has it, I'm also a single mom. And I looked at the calendar and thought, my son is gonna be with his father for the holidays, which essentially means I'm gonna be alone for the holidays. So on top of everything that I'm dealing with, then I'm gonna be alone for the holidays. Absolutely saying yes to Ashley was what was needed. I started kind of withdrawing from social media. I was withdrawing from just socializing in general. And I realized it's time for me to take a break, take a knee. It's hard for me to do as a first sergeant and as a leader because so many people rely on me. But I know that as I'm constantly pouring into others, if there's nothing left for me to pour, then I'm not going to be effective.
Doesn't matter how strong you are.
Right. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Eventually, that amount of stress and that weight of leadership will take its toll.
It will.
That's an important message that we really wanted to use this segment to express. And then you flew in.
Yes.
And you got this call and you flew into Nicaragua and you met this string of amazing people, starting with Mr. Carlos Mendez.
Yes.
Taxi cab driver. Tell me about Carlos.
Carlos was amazing from day one, up until it was time for me to leave, doing everything possible to accommodate us, me and my friends. And he took us places I never even knew existed there. He was just a protector. Not only did he just drive us, but he made sure we were safe. He made sure we were okay. And he only speaks Spanish, so he had me definitely reaching into my my bank of different things. And speaking Spanish is one of the areas where I've definitely tried to strengthen. And I was able to do that with him because he wasn't speaking any English. But boy, we were able to communicate so well and have the greatest experiences. So
it's almost like you landed and he gravitated to you and appointed himself to be on overwatch for you.
Absolutely.
And then not only that, he took you to these places like the volcano. Tell me about that you never would have known about otherwise.
Never would have known about. And it was so amazing. Like, I don't even know that I have words to really express how breathtaking it was to stand up at the top of that hill and overlook not only the city of Managua, which is the capital, but to look into that volcano. I didn't even remember smelling smoke or ash. It was just this very beautiful, still, calm. We took 1 million pictures, to include with Carlos, and I could not thank him enough for that experience. It was nice to just have that quietness, but have all that bright light too at the same time. He took us to a mountaintop, and it was a statue of Jesus on the hill pointing out over San Juan del Sur. And it was, I don't even have words to express like how much that filled my soul. It was like food for my soul, basically, and my spirit. And he made that happen. And he was so grateful to do it. Like, I felt like he fed off of our energy and could see that he did something to help us. And in return, I feel like we gave and poured into him as well, not even realizing it. So that was very amazing for me, and the type of leader that I am, and because I so heavily rely on the spiritual pillar of my comprehensive airman fitness to keep me afloat.
And it wasn't just Carlos. They were the perfect strangers is how you wrote about it in your blog.
Yes.
There were so many people that received energy from you and gave energy to you. In this incredibly miraculous way.
Yes. I had to blog about it. I don't know, and for the individuals, hopefully they'll get a chance to see this. I've expressed it on my blog and I wrote it. It's called The Perfect Strangers, Los Extraños Perfectos. And every single person, there was a group of about 6 of them, every single person poured into me in a way that I didn't even know I needed. And that's why I believe that the Lord really answered my prayer before I left to go, because they took care of me in ways that I didn't even realize I needed. And after that, I was by myself because my friends had gone on a horseback riding trip. And I was sitting on the balcony. And it was the first time since 2018 when I deployed that everything I had experienced from that point up until now with the death of the airmen and just the different scenarios that played out where I was fragile, I let it all go on that balcony. I cried the ugliest cry, had the snottiest nose, but I felt a sense of relief that I don't know that I would have experienced had I just stayed home and not decided to go on this trip. So I left everything in Nicaragua and I left there feeling so refreshed, so revived, re-energized. And I'm sure you guys can feel it and tell just when I came back and I was sharing my story, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave. And the significance of this trip is I travel a lot. I go around the world a lot. I've had a lot of worldly experience. I've lived overseas. This was one of the first intentional trips that was not tied to the military, that didn't have the family element to it where I had to help still kind of like entertain family and all that. I got to just be Erin. I didn't have to be Sergeant Escare. I didn't have to be Mom. I didn't have to be Mrs. Scare, the wing exercise planner. I just got to be E.
You want this for everyone, don't
I want this for everybody.
You want this for everyone.
And there's nothing wrong with transparency. For any leaders, for anybody in a position where others are relying on you, it's okay to take a knee. And withdraw if you need to. It really is for your mental health, for your spiritual health, your emotional health, whatever. It's okay to recharge, even for the strongest people.
That's right. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the show tonight. We hope you enjoyed this important discussion. Here are a few resources for the homeless and those experiencing anxiety or just wanting to help with our present health crisis. The Veterans Accession House helps veterans get off of the street. You can reach them at 925-267-4371 or at vahouse.org. The Veterans Crisis Line provides a lifeline to veterans in crisis 24 hours a day. Talk to someone by calling 1-800-273-8255 and pressing 1, or go to veteranscrisisline.net. Nextdoor can connect you with people in your neighborhood in this time when community is more important than ever. Find them at www.nextdoor.com. Team Rubicon Disaster Response is helping people in this time of need. Learn how to volunteer at teamrubiconusa.org. And the Shanty Project has a COVID-19 emergency response volunteer program. To find out more, go to shanty.org/volunteer. Veterans Voices is brought to you in part by contributions from the 2020 census. Now more than ever, it is important for veterans to stand up and be counted. The Veterans Affordable Home Program, serving those who have served us, ensuring the American dream for our veterans. And the Diablo Valley Veterans Foundation, dedicated to helping veterans near you. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch this episode and many others on our YouTube channel, Veterans Voices of Contra Costa. So be sure to subscribe. Our next show is on Monday, May 11th at 7 p.m. Be sure to tune in. Can't wait to have you. We want to send our well wishes to all veterans and their families in these difficult times. Thanks so much for watching Veterans Voices. Have a great evening.